Welcome back. All right, so we're going to talk about the LA Kings today and my continuing look at teams that lost in the first round. And what's interesting with the Kings is they lose in the first round against Edmonton for the second year in a row. This time it took 6 games. So it kind of feels like LA took that big step last year and there wasn't really that big step forward this year. But they're on the verge. They're right on the cusp of being a contender. So the series started out well enough for them. They won game 1 4-3 in Edmonton. Then they lost game 2 4-2 in Edmonton, but they got the split. And then they went home and they won game 3 3-2 again in overtime. So it felt like this series is close. Might be LA's turn. Edmonton beat them the first time out, but then in game 4 Edmonton gets the overtime win 5-4. And then they go home, and in game 5 it was a very authoritative 6-3 win. And then in game 6 they go to LA and they win 5-4. Not the prettiest series win, but hey, you get the win. That's what matters. It was a close series. The numbers that pop out at you, the power play for LA was excellent, 33.3%. Excellent if it was against anybody but the Oilers, anyways. The penalty kill, 43.8%. And it would be easy to dunk on the Kings and say, well, that was a terrible penalty kill if the Oilers weren't currently doing the same thing to the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And if the Oilers hadn't set records this season for having the best power play since the NHL started tracking it in the late 70s. So it is not an embarrassment to lose against the Oilers, but I'm sure it was a disappointment for the LA Kings because it wasn't that far before the end of the season when it looked like they might finish first and they might have the easiest route right out of the first round if they'd got a chance to play against the Winnipeg Jets. And I use air quotes because I don't know if there's an easy route to a Stanley Cup. But at any rate, the LA Kings out in the first round, it's easy to kind of write them off and say, well, they're right in the middle. The one question mark I do have about the LA Kings is the goaltending. The goaltending going forward is very much in focus. But I want to talk about the young players too. So the second name down here, that's Brandt Clarke. Played 9 games this year, had 2 assists. The expectation is Brandt Clarke will be a part of the roster next year, probably play a lot. This is already a very talented and deep blue line. There are a couple of exits going off that blue line, but it is just going to be an even better blue line next year. Quinton Byfield, one of the more divisive names so you're going to hear about from the LA Kings. He may never live up to his draft standing. Sure, fine. But he's still a good young player. 2020, 2021, he had 1 assist in 6 games. Last year, in 40 games, he had 5 goals and 5 assists. This year, 53 games in the regular season, 3 goals, 19 assists, 22 points. His points per game are going up. So I would expect next year probably 40, maybe 45 points. His ice time was going up. He can be trusted with top 6 minutes. And he's a solid all-around player. So I think Byfield's done a good job of growing into what he's going to be. And again, it may never be what people wanted when he was drafted as high as he was, but still, I mean, if you end up getting a pretty good NHL player, that's a key thing right there. Rasmus Kupari, of course, debuted with 1 game in his first season in 2020-2021, just the 1 game, but he had 1 goal in it. Last year in 80 games, 14 goals, 13 assists, 27 points. This year, he only played 56 games, but he had 13 goals, 15 assists, 28 points. So he had 1 more point, and he played 24 less games. It's pretty good. So there are some good young players here, and then there's Vilardi. So Gabe Vilardi, who, yes, back in 2017, I thought it'd be great if the Canucks had drafted him. They drafted Pettersson. Vilardi has kind of proven that, if not for injuries that prevented him from making his debut in the NHL, who knows, right? So 2019-2020, he played 10 games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. The following season, played 54 of the 56 games that season, 10 goals, 13 assists, 23 points. Surprisingly, last year, spent a majority of the season in the AHL, but it seemed to help. Played 25 games last year in the NHL, 5 goals, 2 assists, 7 points, but this year, in 63 games, he missed some games with injury, 23 goals, 18 assists, 41 points. And Vilardi with some key goals at key moments of games. And yeah, I think he could be a 30-goal scorer. The question for him, of course, is can he stay healthy for a full 82 games? And will his production continue to trend in the right direction? But that's a pretty good set of young players right there. And this is really where LA's focus is going to be in the coming seasons. Now, when we look at their UFA and RFA list, on the UFA side, a couple of rentals here. You have Gavrikov, you have Korpisalo. Gavrikov was fantastic for the Kings after they picked him up, but they don't have the cap space to keep Gavrikov. Same can be said of Korpisalo on some level. He was good during the regular season and the postseason. Again, it's the Oilers. So, I mean, I could point out his .892 save percentage, but it's the Oilers. And if you look at 5-on-5 versus penalty killing, well, again, that would be just eliminating the Oilers' biggest strength, which is their power play, which I don't think is fair. But at any rate, Korpisalo, Gavrikov, both probably on their way out. Edler, I would think, is likely to retire. Can't wait to do a career video on Alex Edler and talk about everything he was able to do in his career. But yeah, it's probably at its finish. And again, if Edler's coming out, Clark's coming in, that will change the face of that blue line. On the restricted free agent side, you've got Zach McEwen, who was picked up at the deadline. Rasmus Kupari, and as I mentioned, he's trending in the right direction, but I would think bridge contract for him, probably not too expensive. Velarde, it will be interesting to see what they give Velarde. Do you give him a 4-year extension? Do you give him 2? Or do you go for 6? Velarde's a very good young forward. Really like his game. And we'll see how much Rob Blake likes his game. Anderson Dolan is also up as a restricted free agent. Probably not a huge race for him. Probably a 1 or a 2-year deal. But again, these players will not kill the rest of their cap space. But their cap space is tight. $7,586,666 for next season, according to Cap Friendly. So it's going to be tough for the Kings. This is going to be a tough one. Because they're close, and they're close enough that I think this summer they're going to want to make improvements. So maybe you move somebody out in order to make some more cap space. At any rate, Drew Doughty's contract does stand out, doesn't it? $11 million a year until 2027. I like Doughty's game. Is it worth $11 million at this point? That's something you guys can talk about. I would say that it's probably $1 million and a half above maybe where it should be, but at any rate, yeah, 11 million. And then Kopitar, it's a $10 million deal for Kopitar. That ends next year. My guess is Kopitar and the Kings sit down and work on some kind of an extension as soon as this summer, or he lets them know if this is going to be the end of it for him, if he's ready to step away, or whatever he decides to do. Kopitar has been the leading scorer for the Kings for a very long time. I know he ended up finishing first because of Fiala's injury this year, but it's still nice to see him being first in their scoring list. That's kind of a standard thing. It doesn't look right when it's anybody else. So Kopitar's $10 million would come off the books next year, which frees up some room for others. And again, I don't think Kopitar gets a $10 million a year contract the next time out. Anderson, $4.125 million till 2031. I have Mikey Anderson on the board because Matt Roy is up next year, $3.15 million till 2024. And I think Roy probably gets a similar contract to Mikey Anderson's. So I would think probably a raise of about $1 million next season. But again, the salary cap will go up. There's money coming off the books. They'll be able to get that done. Peterson. Cal Peterson, they tried trading his contract. There were no takers. I would imagine they will try again this summer. There might be a team that feels that they can turn Peterson around. While I was putting this together, I did look at Peterson's numbers in the AHL. A .904 save percentage is okay, but again, at this point in time, he was supposed to be transitioning to be or already being the starter for the LA Kings, and instead he was relegated to the minors for most of the season. So Peterson's numbers didn't really go the direction you'd want, so it may end up being Copley's net again. $1.5 million cap hit for Copley. It's a 1-year extension he signed with them, worth that $1.5 million a year, so he's up next summer. But goaltending is the one thing I wonder about with the LA Kings coming into this next season, and whether or not they might do something to fix things this summer, or if they think that they've already got a solution within their organization. So the trade that everybody had an opinion on at the deadline was, of course, Jonathan Quick going to Columbus for about 5 minutes before he went to Vegas. But at any rate, they traded Quick. They traded a 2023 first and a 2024 third in exchange for Korpisalo and Gavrikov. Well, both of them look like they're on their way out. It was a pure rental situation. The team doesn't get out of the first round. I saw the question asked in the comments, was it worth it, LA, to go through the Quick trade for what happened? I don't know if it was, and I say that not as a Kings fan, but just as somebody who watched what happened after. The Kings went on a nice run after that trade. Korpisalo played well. But in the end, they still lose in the first round. They still end up being the road team against the Edmonton Oilers. So they were still third place. I mean, if they don't make that trade, maybe they end up in a wild card spot and Seattle gets third, but they probably still would have been out in the first round. So I don't know. And that first round pick, it's supposed to be a deep draft, so that pick may end up being one that they wish they had back. They also traded a 2023 third round pick for the rights to Eric Portillo from the Buffalo Sabres organization. He is a goaltender who is 6'6". So I look forward to, at a point in time when we say, well, yeah, he's a good goalie, but he's only 6'5". And goalies are all 6'10" and up these days. That seems to be where we're headed. So Portillo, 6'6" goaltender. He has signed with the LA Kings organization. He may be given a look, at least in preseason, and see what they've got here and whether or not he might be able to solve some of their goaltending issues. You don't want to be in a situation where goalies are just coming and going all the time. Again, that's why they gave Peterson the contract they did when they gave it to him. It just hasn't worked out. Now, this season, the team put up 104 points. Apologies for the noise in the background. Rabbit's decided she's going to move things around the room. Anyways, so they had 104 points this year. The interesting thing with that is they were 1 point away from their team record. They had 105 points in 1974-75, which I had to double check. I had to double take when I saw that. I had to go look through a couple. I'm like, that's their highest, and that is their highest. So they almost set a team points record, but again, they're out in the first round. So yeah. But in 2011, 2012, they had 95 points when they won the Cup. In 2013, 2014, they had 100 points when they won the Stanley Cup that year. So they're right in that range where, yes, the LA Kings could end up going on another run, but it's a matter of finding the right mix. They have not won a round since that win in 2014 when they held up the Stanley Cup. Since then, it's been first round upsets when they've made the playoffs. And of course, there was a stretch there where they didn't make the playoffs when they were going through the rebuild to get to this point. One guy I want to highlight too is Alex Turcotte, who has struggled. Number 5 pick in 2019 with Ontario of the AHL this year. 32 games, 6 goals, 11 assists, 17 points. His development stymied. There's been a lot of prospects who've had issues with their development over the last few years with everything that's happened and all. But yeah, the LA Kings, I think, have done well considering the number of prospects that either haven't reached the NHL or, in the case of, like I said, with Byfield, not quite where they were expected to be. But yeah, the LA Kings, I think, are in a good spot. It's just a matter of fixing goaltending. And it is just a matter of making the right moves in order to get over the hump. And it is this mysterious thing, that getting over the hump so you can finally succeed in the playoffs. But what I want to know from all of you watching, especially Kings fans, what do you think they need in order to get past that first round and go on a run in said playoffs? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.